Hi, this is LGBTQ&A, where we get to know different members of the LGBTQ community. I'm Jeffrey Masters, and I'm here today with Tillett Wright. Io is an artist, activist, writer of the new memoir Darling Days, and creator of the proto project Self-Evident Truths. Stay tuned. Hey, Io.
Hi.
You like that music?
Shwing.
It's so peppy, right?
Yeah, so much pep.
I like that.
Yeah, I feel like
that...
we need to be like broken out into like 9 screens of each other and ourselves.
Absolutely. And we're bopping.
Bing. Yeah.
Yeah. So before I read your book, I was going to ask you how you chose the name Io. I thought
But
it was
then you did your homework.
And then I read the book. Yeah, but I thought it was something that you like renamed yourself to like
Everybody
fit
does.
the new you.
Everybody does. No, my parents knew already. The me that was coming, the forthcoming child was not to be gendered. So
It's
they named me Io.
amazingly gender neutral.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Do you actually think it's like fortuitous, or is that?
I think it plays into everything that my parents are about, which is just not playing by the rules.
Okay.
So it makes perfect sense. My dad was more into like the conceptual nature of the name than he was about like whether or not it fit into some category of something that society wanted him to.
Yeah. I mean, knowing that they named you after Jupiter's moon kind of tells you everything you need to know.
Well, okay, here's the real story, though, is that they didn't name me after the moon as much as my dad thought that he invented the name, and then, which is a problem that runs in my family, and then later figured out, oh, it's actually a moon of Jupiter and a shadow of joy in Nigeria and a Greek goddess. But they didn't know that. He was like, oh, I like how this looks, and I like that there's a line and a circle and everything. And then later, people were like, you know that that's actually a thing, right? And he said, oh, yeah. But he didn't know that.
That's perhaps even weirder.
Yeah.
He literally drew a line in a circle.
Yeah, he said that you can see, I mean, look, here's a line and a sphere. You can see a line and a sphere and everything that's three-dimensional. And he liked that it was a high and a low sound, and he liked that it was input-output, and then digital information happened, you know?
That's amazing.
My dad's a conceptual dude. Yeah.
And then now IO is everywhere with like iOS.
iOS, IO digital cable. The first time I called a friend and I said, hi, I asked for my friend, and his little sister picked up the phone. She was like 6, and she goes, what's your name? And I said, IO. She said, like the digital cable? And I said, my life is over. Thank you, sweet child. I'm going to go kill myself now.
Oh my God, good thing you didn't.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so your gender has been fairly fluid and mutable throughout your life. Do you think that it's all been getting to this place where you are today, or will it continue to change and evolve?
Oh my God, I hope it continues to change and evolve. I'm 31 years old. I'm not made out of salt. I hope that I don't stop and just freeze now. I think that is the important part, is continuing to allow yourself room to grow and change at every point, no matter how attached you become to something. And it's interesting, you know, when I first started writing this book, I identified as a she, so the publishers all knew me as a she, and and 6 months before the book comes out, I'm all excuse me, just so you know, and they were like, what? And obviously because of the content of the book, I lived as a boy for 8 years as a kid, so they weren't super shocked, but I think the publicist had a panic attack, because it's like, oh my God, do I have to call everybody back and say, oh, his pronouns have changed? Like, it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
They handled it with so much grace and aplomb. But yeah, in a moment where a lot of people are suddenly going to be thrust into talking about you and defining who you are, to then change your definition has been an interesting ride.
I'm sure. I mean, and I asked because the back of the book, the author bio has no gender.
Yeah,
there's no
it's
pronouns.
pronounless.
Yeah, it's so. I don't
Good
want
catch.
to. Thank you. I don't want to judge and tell you what you have to do, but I'm curious why you do not like stick with gender neutral pronouns, so you don't need to keep changing. Like, you're allowed to keep changing. But to me, it's like so much stress to keep doing that.
That's a strange question, because he feels right to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Gender neutral pronouns don't actually feel like they apply to me.
Okay. And I guess I'm asking that because I'm so impressed that you do not have stress or like self-judgment, or are not afraid to continue evolving. And like, I think that example is so important in our culture.
Yeah, I come from a world, I mean, the reason that I wrote this book is because I come from a world where that wasn't put on me as a kid. And so I am like an ambassador from a distant planet where you get to be whatever you feel that you are, truly feel that you are. And that's changed, that changed. There's a misconception that when I was 5 or 6, I decided to be a boy, but I was living as a boy. It was just that at 5 or 6, kids start categorizing each other and deciding who's allowed to do what based on gender. And so I was confronted with the notion of having to pick one. And then I thought, oh, well, and if the boys do all of X and girls do all of Z, I've never done Z, so I'm definitely a boy. And I lived as that for 8 years. And then at 14, I got hit with puberty, and I was like, I would like to try being the thing that everybody considers normal and see what that feels like. So I lived as a girl for, 14 years, and like a bisexual girl for like 6 or 7 years, and then a gay girl. And then at 28, I was like, I think actually I had it right when I was a kid. I'm not gender neutral.
Yeah.
I'm actually a boy. I just, it's taken me a long time to figure that out.
I hope that my question didn't offend you.
It's interesting to me that you, as on this show, an LGBT show, are the first person that's ever posed a question that has said, why don't you?
Yeah.
No one has done that. And that's interesting to me.
I like sought so hard to not be judgmental. But I think
why is that so hard for you? Like, what about this? Let's turn this around. What about this?
No, and it's not with your story. Oh. It's just in general. I think that we as a society, like reading your narrative of going between girl and boy, it's in my mind, was it me? I would have not wanted to. I think coming out is so hard. I would not have wanted to continue coming out. That feels like a stressful experience for me.
I never came out. That's why.
Or keep to changing, perhaps.
Yeah, but that's, I think right there is that you just hit the nail on the head. It's not stressful for me because I don't live in a world, thankfully, because of my parents and my friends, where I have to come out. And if I had to do that process every time, I would be so traumatized. But I don't have to like gear up all of my arguments and my forces and my wins and then go and be like, okay, everybody sit down. This is what's going on. I get to just be like, hey, Dad, listen, I think that actually I'm a man and I think I had it right when I was 5. And so can you try to use male pronouns? And I get him saying, well, what does that mean to you? Okay, how do we do this? And it's a conversation, and it's not this like traumatic instance of me busting out and being like, everything has changed. You change. You know what I mean? It's like, I hate the idea that people have to come out, because coming out is based on the assumption that you are something until you change that notion. And it's like, why is the assumption that anybody is straight or cis or in, anything? So that's what I'm advocating for. And that's why, is because I don't have that trauma experience every time.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
I mean that.
Yeah.
And going off of that and like your family and your world.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating, the dynamic in the book between, there were things you didn't have growing up always with like stable housing and stable food, but you never once had a parent questioning your gender.
That's the reason that, writing a book I started writing at 27 and I'm 31 now. There's an inherent narcissism in the act of writing about yourself, and it gets stuck in my throat a lot. But the reason why it's okay, and it's been okay, is because the one thing that my parents unequivocally got right always, 100% of the time, that most parents do not, was that they accepted me for who I said that I was. And I think that the dichotomy of the things that lacked and the things that people in conservative society use to dismiss parents as failures or bad parents, neglect or lack of food or lack of electricity or drug use or whatever, being generally weird. My parents engaged in all of that, but got this one fundamental thing so right. And we have such strong relationships now. And I feel like I am the person who I am because they supported my sense of dignity and self-respect. And I see so many people who had all the other stuff, who had regular meals and suburban housing and and dad is sneaking a whole bottle of gin as soon as he gets home because he hates everybody and doesn't want to be there. And mom is fucking the postman or like whatever. And all of it implodes or falls apart, or there's hatred, or there's like secret undercurrents of awfulness. And they don't support each other for who they actually really are. They live in this facade. So I would always choose my life over that.
Yeah.
You know?
And it was so clear too that despite the things your mom quote unquote did wrong, if you want to classify it that way, her love for you was just like number one, immense. Like it wasn't a monster. Like we're crazy. It was, she was doing everything she thought was right for you.
Yeah, and the book opens with a letter to my mom because as I was writing it, my mom has really dropped the ball in a lot of ways, in certain moments, way worse than others. And it's gotten really dark, and I keep doing these readings where I read funny scenes, and I'm like, just so you know, the rest of this book is like a murderous death march. But I opened the book with a letter to her because I know that despite all of the things that went wrong, her instinct and her desire is to always protect me and to treat me as well as she can. She just doesn't live by society's rules. And I knew it was going to be incredibly painful for her to read first person present, walk through my experience of how much pain she caused me. And I wanted the readers to understand that this book is not about her failings. This book is not an indictment of a person for getting something wrong. This book is about understanding why people do the things that they do that cause you pain, so that you can learn to actually have acceptance for how they got where they are and forgiveness for them if you want to continue to have relationships with them. Because I can stand here and I can be like, my mom spilt the milk, my mom spilt the milk. But like, meanwhile, the milk is soaking into the carpet and it's going to start stinking, and that's my responsibility to clean up.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm more concerned with like, okay, mom, do you want to help me clean up this milk? Or we can just like not have a relationship. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to take that metaphor as far as I can.
No, I like the metaphor. And just hearing about your upbringing with your family, but also in the location in New York City, it felt like a foreign world. Like I felt like I was reading like Frank McCourt, like Angela's Ashes, and this was the 30s, but it was the 80s.
Yeah.
It's just
Thank you, by the way. I'll take that.
You're welcome. I just couldn't believe about this like time and this like place, in that it was so recent.
Yeah, New York is a completely different beast, and it changed so fast. So fast. I don't recognize it anymore when I go home. It's just, I mean, it's all bankers and NYU students, and it's a completely different universe. But I grew up with all low-income housing on my block, and then there was like a 700-man men's shelter across the street, which is where everybody went when they got out of jail or got kicked out of the mental institution or, you know, whatever. I think I call it the abscessed injection point for every fuck-up from as far away as Texas. I don't usually quote myself, but I can remember that one. Yeah, and then there was a halfway house for boys, or like a group home for boys on the corner, and the Bowery Hotel used to be a gas station that was on our corner, and like that has all happened in my lifetime, you know, and I don't have that many wrinkles, so, you know, it's all gone very fast.
Yeah.
Money poured into New York. Giuliani, cops, money, artists out.
Goodbye, artists.
Goodbye.
Do you...
Except my mom, she's still there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Bitching about the yuppies. And mushroom clouds of fluorescent lights that will take them all out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you have like a healthy relationship with money now from growing up without it?
Fascinating question.
I'm winning you back. Good.
Yeah, no, you never lost me.
Thank you.
I'm very, it's interesting because my mom, I grew up so super poor, so I always have a sense of what it is. Like, I will never allow myself to go broke. I will never allow myself to be hungry. So I'm very careful with money in that way. And I didn't grow up with frivolous things, so I don't spend my money on stupid frivolous things. But I also grew up watching my dad, who is the single most generous human being on earth. Like, if he made a couple $1,000s from a thing, he'd be like, let's, you know, I'll spend it on taking you on a trip or like buying food and we'll have a feast. But it was very much communal based generosity. And so my, all my spending at this point goes to creating spaces and situations in which people that I love can come together, which I think is much healthier than buying handbags, but you know, that's just me.
Okay, I just think of money as a foreign language that you have to learn when you're younger, or it's like so difficult to... I have a friend who like got evicted recently, and I was like, but if you make X and your rent is like Y, you just have to make sure you have like that. And like 1 + 1 = 2 didn't like make sense in his mind.
That's me with everything.
Really?
I mean, I wasn't taught how to take a shower. I wasn't taught about flossing my teeth. I don't think that like it's hard to imagine for anyone who grew up with a real sense of how to be a functional adult, what it's like to be raised like a wolf child. But I did not have a towel. You know what I mean? Like the very, very basic things I had no concept of.
Well, and I don't want to attribute, or I usually don't want to attribute like normal or not normal to childhoods, because like what is normal? But I think it's safe to say that yours was not at all. And that was so apparent in the chapter describing your diet, the food you ate. And it was, before that point in the book, it was like eye-opening, like, oh wow, this is like poverty. This is not a lot.
Which is poverty that you don't really see in modern storytelling so much anymore. Like I feel like Angela's Ash is like in the Depression. There were like generations and generations of people who were telling poverty stories, and now those narratives are being attached to people of color and like different. They're being pushed out, but we don't hear stories about inner city, also white people living in poverty so much. And I didn't even really, that didn't even occur to me until my book started getting compared to other people's stories. And it's like, yeah, that is actually a rare, special thing. But I consider normal to be things that most people can relate to. And most of my childhood, most people cannot relate to. So
growing up though, you have nothing to compare it to. This is your parents, and their parenting is the one way. When did you start to realize that it was not the norm?
There's a chapter in the book where I'm 9 and I go to this kid's house in New Jersey for a sleepover, and I steal his bar mitzvah money. And I remember a few instances like that. You know, my mom was a hoarder. We didn't have electricity a lot. There wasn't food there. That was not where people came for sleepovers or play dates. So I didn't really go for sleepovers or play dates very much either. And I was always acting, and there was always something to do. So the rare occasion when I did go and see somebody else's house and how they lived were the moments where I was like, oh, wait a minute, you know, and his mom gave us all mac and cheese or whatever and ice cream, and it was chill, and the relationship with food was chill, and I got to eat however much I wanted to feel full. And I was just like, wait, why isn't this my daily life? Like, how is this not what I experience on the daily? And I remember the feeling when I would sleep over at somebody else's house, which again, I think probably happened twice in my whole childhood, but it was a feeling of I had fear, and then I realized that I didn't need to have the fear. And then I realized, oh, I live in fear every day. Oh, that's not good. That's not normal. But that's not, like you said, you grow up inside of something. You don't know that that's not normal until something clicks. And it clicked around 11 or 12 when a guidance counselor at my school asked me about my home life. And I knew if I tell her the truth about my home life, she's going to freak out. Because I had started to see people's reactions when I would tell them things. They would be like, what? You know, and as I discovered that, I think that's when I started to realize that they didn't all live like that, you know.
Fascinating. Man. So can we talk about these self-evident truths?
Sure. Sure.
This is a photo project going on and capturing people. I love the phrasing, people who are not 100% straight. Wait, anyone who isn't 100%
Anything
straight.
other than 100% straight.
I think that's such like a nice like phrasing.
Thank you.
It's so low pressure.
It took a long time to come to something so simple.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. From creating LGBTQ&A, getting to know the we're so me. I'm like in my little queer bubble, and that's all I can experience. So I don't want to ask a hacky question, but what did you learn about our community, and like what recurring patterns did you see seeing so many different queer people from so many different parts of the country?
One recurring theme is people being unbelievably resilient in situations where every single day, just walking down the street, you're being called a F word, you're being looked at, you're being yelled at, you're being harassed. People will go through extraordinary things to be able to feel like they are themselves. And that really blew my mind. And it also gave me this incredible sense of privilege because I grew up in a city and I grew up on a coast. So I grew up and plus with all of these people. So I have a background that gives me this incredible privilege, whereas so many people have to deal with so much violence, emotional and physical violence every day. And they do, and they stick it out. That really struck me. It also really struck me that we come in literally every size and shape and box, and we're so different. the idea that we are a community is kind of a myth. It's a farce, because we are linked together by this one very thin binding agent that doesn't actually give us any commonalities. Like, as much as straight people are the same, they're not a community because they like to have sex with the same type of person, but we are unified by being marginalized. But that's actually like, it's a pretty thin binding agent. And I found that I had very little in common with a lot of people that I was supposed to be in this community with. So
That's fascinating.
yeah, I mean, it blew apart my notion that a vast swath of society would be the same.
So that kind of defies my notions and like the narratives, because like at least for me, like if I go home to North Carolina where there's a smaller population of queer people, and I hear like the gay voice, someone has it, I'm like just so elated and like my shoulders are relaxed and I want to go talk to them and like be friends.
Yeah,
So
I think that's different though.
I think the binding agent, at least there, is that like we're the outside.
Yes. I mean, past that,
Sure.
like past the familiarity of like, oh, safe place. You are same. You understand me. You're not going to hurt me. That I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, do we actually have anything in common because we are gay? Not necessarily.
Right.
Do we actually have anything in common because we're trans? No. Whereas I went into it thinking that we did. And going up to a person in a bar and talking to them because they're gay, for me, has often resulted in being like, we have nothing in common at all, you know, besides this one facet of our personalities, which I think is so important to our cause and to how far everything can go in terms of actually gaining equality. It's so important that Caitlyn Jenner is a Republican. It's so important that Caitlyn Jenner can't get things right and that so many of us disagree with her politically, because if we don't have that kind of diversity within our own community, it becomes one-dimensional and it becomes easy to dismiss.
Yeah.
But because we have all of this, like, we can say, actually, we're just human beings who also happen to be LGBTQIA, XYZ, LMNOP.
And I want to believe that that is the direction that we're going too. Of like, look how different we are.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, that's everything that I'm fighting for, is not to homogenize us and to say, look how normal we are. It's to humanize us and say, look how different we all are and look how different you all are. And these all, like, we are all the same because we're all different, and difference is something to celebrate, and it's beautiful, you know?
Wow. Looking at the pictures themselves, they're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I like how simple they are. Just like black background, straight on. The thing about them, though, that keeps them from being like quote unquote simple is, to me, the expression on everyone's faces. There's not like a posed face in there. So I want to know like how you get that. Like, what are you saying to them?
There are some posed faces. You know, it goes pretty fast usually. So if I go to a Pride, let's say, for example, Chicago Pride, there's a million people, and I went up on a stage and I made an announcement and I said, hi, I'm Io. I'm doing a project called Self-Evident Truths, and I'm photographing 10,000 people who are anywhere on the LGBT spectrum in all 50 states. And this is Illinois' one chance to represent itself. I'm at that booth. There's that cute boy with the We Are You shirt. Come find us. Bang. And people listen to that, and I go, and when I have 10,000, I'm going to the National Mall. I'm going to lay them out and do a march on Washington. Join me. And then it's a stampede. So then you've got, I think I shot 200, I can't say I shot anymore, unfortunately. I photographed 275 people in like an 8-hour, 6-hour period, which means there's a line of people waiting and filling out release forms, and it's frantic. So they come up, and sometimes people have a story they want to share, but sometimes they just are like, okay, what do I do? And I'm like, just stand there. Okay, perfect. Chin down a little bit. Look up, right? Okay. Oh, you're so beautiful. The second you tell somebody that they're beautiful, that's what you're seeing in those photos. It's like, I'm not going to say it if I don't think it, but most often when you see somebody standing in front of you bearing their soul because they're proud of who they are and they want to take a stand for what they are, they're beautiful. And then I can tell them that, and it's honest, and it's something they just opens up and something happens in their eyes, and that's what you're seeing, you know?
I love that.
I do too.
Did that take a while for you to learn?
Everything took a while for me to learn, because this whole project was started on a kind of an instinct where I thought, how is Prop 8 happening? How are people voting against each other's rights based on this weird notion that we're all different from each other? And I thought, I want to introduce people to each other. But I didn't understand that I needed to photograph, thousands of people in all 50 states and the National Mall and like all of that. That all developed over the course of understanding what the project was and understanding what it meant to people and what they needed from it. So
you're almost at the 10,000 goal.
9,803 in all 50 states.
So that's one more shoot.
Yes, except that I've shot all of the states. Now I'm only gonna do my finicky friends who are like, you need to reshoot my photo, and celebrities basically who I can't say that I've shot Queer America without RuPaul, you know what I mean, or Ellen Page. So I need to photograph all of those people and people who've contributed strongly, Kate Bornstein, etc.
Oh, Kate.
Yeah,
Awesome.
It's important.
So I love that. So when you say the National Mall, like it's outdoors.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're not like lying them on like the ground.
No, I want to do, there have been a few different iterations, but I think I want to use like exhibition truss, 6 foot tall, 4 feet wide prints of the photos. And then I want to group them by other things besides their gayness or their transness or their whatever. I want to group them by other things that they've identified with. So if somebody's a teacher or if somebody's a mom or somebody's, whatever, group them by that. So it actually becomes a project about intersectionality. It becomes a project of, yes, come and walk through these 10,000 faces. And I guarantee you can't find somebody who doesn't look like a member of your family. But also witness these people for the multiplicity of their identity. They're not only gay. They are also a trucker or a brother, or like other things that they identify with, perhaps more strongly even than the fact that they are LGBT, but they're forced to identify as LGBT because they're legally discriminated against in this country.
So it becomes so important because we're taking those rights away.
Yeah. You have forced me to tell you this thing about myself because I may be fired for it. It's a risk.
Wow.
In 27 states, I can be fired for this, So.
Has your own changing relationship with your gender changed your sexuality and who you're attracted to?
Not yet, but I've been exploring what it would mean to take T, and that is something that they warn you about. Actually, I had a crush on a trans guy. I had my first crush on a trans guy, and I thought, wow, this is really accelerating really fast. But I went to San Francisco, and I had seen that he was hosting a party, and my friend was like, we gotta go. I want to see this in action. And we went to this leather bar, and he identifies as a gay trans man, and there he was on a bed in some, he's a rent boy, you know what I mean? He's a sex worker, and like that he owns that and that's his space. And I thought, this is so fascinating, and I wanted him. I had a crush on him. I was like, wow, I am actually so down, and I'm so confused by this, and I love the fact that I'm confused by it. And so when you ask me if I'm like done changing, I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
But so I don't know. I'm open to it, but so far, no. Besides that one moment, I've always been into really feminine girls, so I'm still just a boring, old, boyish looking.
Very boring. That's what I was thinking the whole time, actually.
So predictable. So predictable.
What is this? Is it a fish on your arm?
It's a whale shark.
A whale shark?
Yeah, this is my reminder to myself that no matter how big my problems may feel in a moment, not only am I just one of 7 billion humans, but I'm also one of how many countless species of thinking creatures that also have their own things going on, and to not get too ahead of myself.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Are they all black and white?
Tom
of Finland.
Yeah, this is my homage to spending my 20s fighting for gay rights. This one was about surviving depression. This one is about being on the road forever. It's a girl having phone sex. This one's my mom's nickname from the 70s. This one says, keep your shirt on, in my dad's handwriting. Not literal shirt, metaphorical shirt. Yeah.
I think that's a great place to leave it on.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you very much for this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. If people want to like find your work, should we send them to your website?
Yeah, darlingdays.com has all of my stuff, and then you can link out to Self-Evident. You can go to everything else from there, but darlingdays.com.
Cool. Thank you. And of course, all of our stuff's on iTunes, YouTube if you want to see our faces, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.